For the focus today here on France 24, American troops begin their pullout of Iraq. Our reporting team has been to the nerve centre of the US operational headquarters there. It's 6 years since the US-led invasion to topple Saddam Hussein, and these years have been marked with sectarian clashes and uncertainty. US troops won't be out of Iraq for good for another 2 years. Some 130,000 will remain there at their military bases, poised for action if needed. But as one Washington diplomat put it, Iraq is ready to rise to the occasion. But the task of reconciling feuding Sunni and Shiite Muslims and of stifling tensions between Arabs and Kurds is a tough one. US troops start their pullout then with violence down sharply, though reminders of the stark reality of Iraq's recent troubles are never far away. One fear is Al-Qaeda could exploit a power vacuum.
The road leading to Camp Independence is no longer on high alert. The strict US military rules have been relaxed. You can even walk up and knock on the door.
Hello. Hello.
These soldiers from the 1st Cavalry Division, whose home base is in Texas, have been around the block, but from now on they'll be acting as a backup to an Iraqi brigade under the command of an Iraqi colonel.
They're already capable of conducting independent operations with little support from us, and he wants to maintain that. So instead of seeing coalition patrols rolling out and 1 or 2 Iraqi security force vehicles, he's asked us to flip that. It's not our missions that they're supporting, it's their missions that we're supporting.
Colonel Costanza has spent most of the last 6 years in Iraq. He's seen the worst of the violence. Now, for the first time, Iraqi soldiers are a part of the team at his command headquarters.
Normally, you wouldn't have Iraqi security forces in an operations center like this. But it works great, and these guys do a great job.
The gates between the American base and the Iraqi police station are always open. The initial mistrust has faded away.
When we first arrived here, this gate was closed and stayed locked. And if you wanted to come through, you had to knock on the gate. And that's how we opened it. But for security, we kept it closed. Now during the day, we actually leave the gate open all the time. So you see how I came across? I don't put all my stuff on. I don't have my...
That wasn't possible a year ago,
No,
right?
no. Without doubt, I would not have come across that gate without probably a squad. We would have had all our gear on. As you see, the only weapon I've got is my... It's not even loaded. It's just on my head.
A few kilometres away, we're at a checkpoint at Rashida, a Shia zone to the north of the capital. It's seen bombings, assassinations and revenge killings. The Wolf Brigade, the Interior Ministry's Special Commando Unit, and the Iraqi National Police are in charge of security here. There are no American soldiers. There may still be a threat of suicide attacks, but they're getting rarer.
That's our snapshot of what's happening in Iraq. I'm joined now in the studio by Professor Henri Barkey, who is from the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace in Washington, D.C. Professor Barkey, thank you very much for joining us. In our report there, we saw how things have changed in Iraq. In your opinion, as an observer of the situation, do you feel that the Iraqi forces are ready to take the reins themselves?
Probably the answer to that is yes and no at the same time. That is to say, I don't think the Iraqi troops are ready on their own, but the truth of the matter is that American soldiers and American trainers and American coordinators will be embedded with Iraqi units everywhere. So there will be Americans who will be fighting with the Iraqis. So all Americans are not in the bases as people seem to think. So in that sense, the Americans embedded with the Iraqis will be able to call in whenever necessary support, etc.
Nonetheless, the fact that some troops are pulling out, it goes some way at least to satisfying the demands of people that troops should get out of Iraq.
Oh, absolutely. The fact that the troops are being pulled into bases, and in fact they will also be reduced over time. There won't be 135,000 troops a year from now. Obama wants to reduce the number of these troops. So it is an improvement. And psychologically for the Iraqis, and you see Maliki making a big deal out of this, saying this is the greatest thing since the British troops were pulled out. So the Iraqis are turning this into a new beginning. But in reality, what people don't realize is that the American troops have been withdrawing from the cities gradually, and in fact today is a rather anticlimactic day because most of the troops are already out.
Okay, bear with us a second. Luca Manchet is our reporter who put together that report, has just joined us here. Luca, thank you for finding time to move from the French studio to our studio. You've reported from Iraq extensively during the lifetime of France 24, okay, which isn't a long time, obviously, not as long as the operation in Iraq. What changes have you noticed there?
Well, the security improvement is huge in Iraq since a year and a half approximately, even if there were a series of attacks last weeks. Since probably last September, the decrease of violence was very important. What you see today in Baghdad, except the days of the attacks, for example, last week in Sadr City, is a more peaceful situation. With already since a few weeks, the Iraqis in charge of the security. In fact, the Americans pulled out from Baghdad weeks ago, and they gave the keys of the capital to the Iraqis a few weeks ago. What will be very important in the next few weeks is the test, that is this pullout. If during the summer there are hundreds of attacks and the Iraqis are not able to handle the situation, this is a nightmare and the end of the pullout, probably. Because a lot of American generals, for example, were talking to the Iraqi counterparts and saying, probably it's too soon. We know that these discussions are taking place in the green zone. A lot of people from the Iraqi side and from the American side are afraid of that it's too soon. But if the Iraqi security forces manage to handle this situation, this will be a victory for this strategy.
Professor Barkey, there's fears on some sides of this equation that it could lead to a power vacuum and the likes of Al-Qaeda could take advantage. Do you see anything in that?
It is possible, but you have to remember that Al-Qaeda, for the most part, is composed of outsiders. So as long as the Iraqi government, with the American help, can stop the infiltration into Iraq, especially from Syria, there will not be such a huge resurgence of Al-Qaeda, I think. The trick here will be to control the Ba'athists, former Ba'athists, and integrate the Sons of Iraq, those Sunni groups, back into Iraqi society, into the Iraqi military. There are many steps Iraqis have to take. What I worry about is not Al-Qaeda's resurgence, is the unhappiness of, like, the Sawa, the Iraqi Sons of Iraq, the Sunnis who've been fighting Al-Qaeda, not being integrated by this government, which is still basically a Shia government. And they may turn against the government if they find to be, if they're not satisfied, if they're unhappy. That's a bigger threat than Al-Qaeda.
And as Luke was pointing out, we saw the violence in Sadr City. There are obviously fears of integrating everybody and keeping this very, very complex and volatile equation together.
Well, what's happening in Sadr City is, to some extent, it's Al-Qaeda trying to create or to trigger a last-minute war between Sunnis and Shia. They're not going to succeed. I mean, the fact that there hasn't been much of a reaction to all these bombings in Sadr City, the fact that the militias in Sadr City have not come back is a good sign.
Okay. Gentlemen, I'm afraid we have to leave it there. We could talk a lot longer, but time is against us. Thank you both very much for joining us. Professor Barkey from the Carnegie Endowment and Luca Manchet, our reporter, who was on the scene there in Iraq. That was the focus on France 24. Stay with us.